Part 13. After guarding the abyss for 1 billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 122. Then he looked in the direction of Meng Zhan and the others, and found that the two of them were also rushing towards him. It seemed that there were really people in this world who were not afraid of death. Before he could find trouble with them, they rushed over to die. At this time, Nangang Xian had the same idea as Meng Zhan and the others, that is, from now on, he would kill everyone who wanted to steal the treasure from him. After all, he had the strength. All his subordinates have the cultivation of the Lord of Nine Tribulations, and he is the top being among the 9 tribulations. The treasures he wants are not only the dragon-suppressing fan in his hand, but just now his servants came and gave him 2 more gifts from his ancestors. Treasure. When Nangang Xian saw Meng Zhan, he was suddenly stunned. How could this guy become the Lord of 9 tribulations? If I remembered correctly before, he should be the Lord of 3 tribulations. Could it be that he is here to overcome the tribulation and improve his cultivation? Then Nangang Xian overturned his idea. Even if he improved his cultivation level, he would only be the master of the 4 tribulations. How could he become the master of the 9 tribulations? Could it be that I saw it wrong before? Or maybe he has some magic weapon that can hide his cultivation, but he won't be able to hide it after entering the mountains. Thinking the last possibility, it is very possible. Although this kind of treasure is rare in the world of immortality, it is still available. It's really interesting to think that Meng Zhan has such a rare treasure on his body. After Meng Zhan arrived in front of Nangang Xian, he said to him, "Hey! We meet again, brother Fan." Hearing Meng Zhan's obscene words, Nangang Xian frowned and said nothing. The subordinate next to him saw Nangang. After seeing Xian's expression, he immediately understood and said, "Bold, you see my young master, and you don't come to greet me quickly. You dare to call me casually. Do you want to die?" Hearing what Nangang Xian's subordinate said, Meng Zhan suddenly felt unhappy, and then said to him, Lu Yu, who was standing behind him, began to make eyes. When Lu Yu saw Meng Zhan's expression, he was really speechless, but he had to go along with it. Who is the boss? Then he said to the subordinate, my young master is talking to your young master because he thinks highly of your young master. Do you need to talk too much? Lu Yu thought at this time that he would offend Nangang Xian anyway. Since Meng Zhan's character has set his sights on him, he will never let him go, so it would be better to be tougher. Of course, there is also the intention of accepting the title in disguise. When the man heard Lu Yu's words, his face turned ugly and he said angrily, "What kind of dog are you? You dare to talk like this? Do you know that my young master is Nangang Xian?" Lu Yu was also really angry at this time. It had been a long time since anyone had seen him. He dared to talk to himself like this, and then he looked at Meng Zhan, indicating that he was going to take action directly. Meng Zhan nodded. Lu Yu did not hesitate and raised his hand to release a sword energy and slashed at the man. When Nangang Xian saw it, he opened the dragon-suppressing fan and wanted to protect his men, but how could he save someone from Lu Yu's hands without even understanding the law? The man was directly penetrated by the sword energy and cut into 2 halves. The blood suddenly burst. Nangang Xian directly blocked the blood luck. Then he looked at Lu Yu with a sinister look and said, "You are so brave. You dare to kill my men in front of me. You two stay and serve me." The people behind heard the order and rushed towards the 2 of them, while Lu Yu retreated in front of Meng Zhan and said, "Don't look at me, after fighting you just now, I still haven't done anything yet. He hasn't recovered yet, you can handle it yourself, young master." Meng Zhan looked at Lu Yu. Although this guy is telling the truth, he doesn't have the consciousness to be a subordinate at all. No, he must be trained in the future. Then he picked up the Hungtian halberd and rushed forward. Facing these 9 tribulation lords now, it was hard to take it easy. With one slash of the halberd, several lives were taken away. The other people were frightened when they saw it. But because of Nangongxian's order, he couldn't retreat at all. Even if he died, he could only step forward to see him off. This was the fate of Deadpool. At this time, Nangongxian saw that Meng Zhan was chopping melons and vegetables and killing his men. He immediately asked the remaining people to retreat and rushed forward with the dragon-suppressing fan. He came up and opened the dragon-suppressing fan, releasing the 2 dragon veins in the fan. The surrounding pressure suddenly doubled and attacked Meng Zhan. Meng Zhan looked at the pressure coming towards him, glanced at his mouth, and saw that this pressure it's not embarrassing to show off. Immediately, his tyrant dragon Heavenly Slayer was released and attacked Nangongxian directly. At this moment, Meng Zhan suddenly felt that the human emperor seal in his body seemed to desperately want these 2 dragon veins. Meng Zhan went up to grab the 2 dragon veins without hesitation. Nangongxian suddenly felt an extremely powerful pressure suppressing himself and the 2 dragon veins. Then he saw that Meng Zhan wanted to grab his own dragon vein, and he thought in his heart, just because you want to grab this dragon vein, you must know that these 2 dragon veins were once the dragon veins of 2 big families. Even his ancestors spent a lot of effort to capture these 2 dragon veins and put them into the fan to refine them. But what happened next made Nangongxian feel extremely horrified in an instant. After Meng Zhan grabbed the 2 dragon veins with both hands, although the 2 dragon veins struggled hard, they had no effect. I saw Meng Zhan sucking hard, sucking 2 dragon veins directly into his mouth and eating them. How is this possible? Is this guy human? He can actually eat dragon veins. After guarding the abyss for 1 billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 123. Although it seemed to outsiders that Meng Zhan had eaten the dragon veins, in fact, after he grabbed the dragon veins, he found that he could not grasp the dragon veins at all. At this time, the human emperor's seal activated in his body, directly suppressing the 2 dragon veins. Then Meng Zhan directly absorbed the 2 dragon veins into his human emperor seal. To outsiders, it looked like Meng Zhan grabbed the dragon veins that were unable to resist and then ate them directly. Just after Meng Zhan absorbed the dragon vein, the pressure suddenly doubled and became even stronger than before. Nangongxian was directly suppressed to the point where he knelt on the ground, unable to even resist. At this time, Nangongxian only felt that he had never been so unbearable. Even when faced with the pressure of his ancestor, he had never been suppressed to the point of kneeling. Nangongxian struggled hard to stand up, but found that the pressure was getting stronger and stronger. After a while, he was completely lying on the ground, and his men had already fainted. Seeing this, Nangongxian finally began to feel fear. He had never thought that he would be defeated by a garbage from the lower world, and the opponent did not even raise a hand and defeated him with coercion. How is this possible? This kid is really from the world of gods and demons. No, not possible. He is definitely not a person from the world of gods and demons. Just because he can hide his cultivation is not simple. Thinking of this, Nangongxian began to sweat, then raised his head with difficulty and asked Meng Zhan, who are you? Meng Zhan was feeling the changes in the human emperor's seal at this time. The current human emperor Yin is absorbing the 2 dragon veins, and it seems to have changed a lot, because the 9 dragons that were originally entangled have now become 11 dragons. Suddenly Meng Zhan seemed to understand something. The word 9-5 Supreme appeared in his mind instantly. Could it be that this human emperor's seal is not complete yet? There were only 9 dragons at the beginning, but in fact there were 5 missing. Now, I accidentally added 2 more to him, which means there are still 3 left. It seems that my European emperor attributes have begun to be fully exerted. Otherwise, how could he always encounter such good things? Then he heard Nangongxian ask who he really was. Didn't this guy tell him that he had such no memory? Then he said, you are really stupid. Have you forgotten that the 2 of us met before? Nangong Xian heard what Meng Zhan asked and didn't answer, and said, "Of course I know, you said your name is Meng Zhan, is from the world of gods and demons." Meng Zhan nodded and said, "Don't you remember this very clearly? Why are you still asking? Huh, do you really think you can deceive me with this life story you made up? Even if you don't tell me, I will find someone to check you. Now that you have absorbed the dragon veins from my dragon suppressing fan, don't think it will be done so easily." After Meng Zhan heard Nangong Xian's words, he was amused by him, and then said, "Why are you so stupid? Can't you see that we are here to rob you?" Nangong Xian's face suddenly turned red from being choked, and he held it in for a long time before saying, "Okay, as long as you dare to admit it, I, Nangong Xian, will admit defeat today, but in the future, you can just wait for the Nangong family's revenge." Meng Zhan walked over, took the dragon suppressing fan in his hand, opened it, and found that the rocks in the fan were broken and the trees were withered. Then the whole fan slowly lost all its power. He couldn't help but twitch in his heart. It's so good. His fan was so useless. Nangong Xian also saw the changes in the Zhenlong fan. If he felt distressed, he felt more distressed than Meng Zhan. This Zhenlong fan had been with him since he was a child, and he liked it very much. Now the dragon vein has been, if someone sucks it away, it has become a complete waste. Even if you are looking for 2 dragon veins to put in, it will still need to be refined again, and it will never return to its original appearance. Thinking of this, Nangong Xian looked at Meng Zhan with hatred in his eyes. Said, "Boy, don't look at it, the dragon suppressing fan is no longer useful. Remember it, I will never give up." After Meng Zhan heard Nangong Xian's words, he walked over, kept hitting Nangong Xian's head with a fan, and said, "Are you really stupid? Now that you are like this, you still dare to say harsh words? Are you not afraid of death?" At this time, Nangong Xian felt the constant knocks on his head and felt great humiliation. No one dared to do this to him since he was a child. Suddenly he was so angry that he smiled and said, "Boy, I'm not afraid to tell you, I have an old man inside me. The mysterious magic light given by the ancestor, as long as someone kills me, the person who killed me will be teleported to the ancestor. Our ancestor will also know this person's appearance. Even if you cover his face, it will be useless. My ancestor has reached the sky and can already see people through the bones. The so-called seeing people through the bones is an extremely high pupil technique. This pupil technique does not need to be specially practiced, but will be automatically possessed when you reach the 8,000 feet of the 10,000 gods realm. Therefore, the 8,000 feet of the 10,000 gods realm Zhang is also called peeping 8,000 Zhang. When Meng Zhan thought of this, he understood the meaning of Nangong Xian's words. He was telling himself that his ancestor was a master who started at 8,000 feet in the 10,000 god realm, and might even be higher. Seeing Meng Zhan's hesitation at this time, he couldn't help but feel very proud, and then continued, "You have to know that I am someone you can't afford to offend. If you kill me, not only you, but also the family behind you will be uprooted." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After guarding the abyss for a billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 124. Originally, Meng Zhan was thinking about how to get the boy to hand over all his magic weapons, but when he heard him talk about his family, this was the most untouchable evil in Meng Zhan's body. Whoever touched it would die. Immediately, his eyes turned cold, and when he looked at Nangong Xian, the Hungtian halberd appeared directly in his hand and slashed towards his head. Nangong Xian didn't even react when he died. He didn't know why Meng Zhan was so decisive and killed him without hesitation. Lu Yu, who was behind him, couldn't help but tremble when he saw Meng Zhan's actions. This guy clearly knew how powerful the Nangong family was, but he still killed him without hesitation. Fortunately, I didn't confront him, otherwise, I would have become a corpse now, but only now, because as Nangong Xian said, the mysterious light in his body had flown out of his body and escaped. Originally, Meng Zhan wanted to catch him when he saw it, but Xian Guang ran away without giving him the slightest chance, but it didn't matter. He might not be afraid of the Nangong family now. After all, he still had the immortal king's order in his hand that had proven to be successful. But no matter how you say it, the most practical thing is to improve your own strength. As I said before, if the Nangong family dares to find trouble if the strength is enough, then they will go directly to the so-called Nangong world and destroy his family's orthodoxy. At this time, I no longer thought too much. In any case, I already knew that the Nangong family had an ancestor who was at least 8,000 feet in the 10,000 god realm, and was very likely to have a higher cultivation level. And because he had been sealed by the mysterious light, he had nothing to hide, so he simply started searching for Nangong Xian's belongings. As expected, there were a lot of good things. And he unexpectedly discovered a 7th level magic weapon, which was a writing brush. The material was extremely special, especially the bristles that gave people a feeling of something and nothing. Lu Yu from behind saw it and exclaimed loudly, "It turns out to be a wanja brush." A wanja brush? What it is? Meng Zhan turned his head and looked at Lu Yu, and Lu Yu looked at Meng Zhan with questions in his eyes. He explained, "I don't know if this is the real thing, but even if it is a fake, it is probably very impressive. As for the function of this pen, it can break the boundary wall at will and travel through the world at will." Meng Zhan heard this. "It's a weapon for escaping. I didn't expect this kid to have such a good thing. It seems that if it hadn't been for the power of the Emperor's seal just now, this kid would have run away with the pen. After playing with it for a long time, I suddenly felt that the Nangong family is still a cultural person. This magic weapon is either a fan or a writing brush. Could it be that the 4 treasures of the study let them train them into magic weapons?" Of course, he didn't have time to worry about that much, so he just thought about it casually and looked at the remaining dead servants of the Nangong family. Meng Zhan didn't show any mercy and killed them directly. But thinking about it, they have to thank themselves. With so many of them, Nangong Xian died. If he went back, he would not die easily, and he would definitely be tortured to death. Thinking of this, Meng Zhan felt that he was becoming more and more kind-hearted now. He would consider the other party in everything he did. This was the rhythm of becoming a saint. Meng Zhan and the two immediately walked aside, not even bothering to deal with the corpses. Now in the Thunder Tribulation Mountains, fresh corpses can be seen everywhere, which is already numbing. Lu Yu, on the other hand, was recovering cross-legged, trying to get back to his peak condition as soon as possible before the treasure was born. This was not only to help Meng Zhan, but also to increase his chance of survival. Of course, Meng Zhan is now considered invincible in the mountains, but Lu Yu has the same temperament as Meng Zhan, only believing in his own strength. No matter how strong the outside world is, he will not feel at ease. Not long after, the two of them discovered that there were no less than 100 auras flying towards this place, and some of them were even flying and fighting. This gave Meng Zhan a headache. I originally thought that they would arrive one by one, and I would slowly kill them one by one, and then loot the treasures, but who knew that they all arrived at once? Lu Yu opened his eyes and looked into the distance, while Meng Zhan was lying on the ground breathing heavily. After seeing Lu Yu, he said, "You can recover with peace of mind. I won't let you have any accidents, but you should also act as a subordinate, you know it. I have been doing my part since I took you in, it's as if I'm working for you." Listening to Meng Zhan's dissatisfaction and complaints, Lu Yu did not speak, but simply closed his eyes, continuing to recover his skills. When Meng Zhan saw Lu Yu closing his eyes again, he curled his lips and said, "Let's beat him up." At this time, 100 people had flown down. At the same time, they saw Meng Zhan and 2 people here, and they all immediately became vigilant, because there was someone lying next to them. There are 20 corpses. It looked like they were all 9 tribulation masters, and the 2 of them actually killed 20 people. Although this record was not top-notch, it was already better than most people. But what they didn't know was that Meng Zhan had killed them all by himself. Except for Lu Yu and Kai Guang, who had killed 1, the remaining 19 people were all killed by Meng Zhan. At this time, Meng Zhan suddenly saw an old acquaintance, Fairy Buletin. He raised his hand and waved to Buletin. Fairy, come on, I think the ribbon on your body is very beautiful. After guarding the abyss for 1,000,000,000 years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 125. Buletin had actually noticed Meng Zhan a long time ago and had intended to avoid it, but who knew he would actually see him. But at this time Buletin was surprised, this guy was already the lord of the 9 tribulations. How did he calculate his cultivation level? Do you want to improve if you want to? Meng Zhan at the 8th calamity was already abnormal enough, but now he was at the 9th calamity, which meant that he was really invincible in this Thunder Tribulation mountain range. Then he smiled at Meng Zhan and nodded, saying hello. He couldn't help it, he only had this magical weapon. Although the ancestor just asked Deadpool to send 2 more in, they were all used for escape. Moreover, he did not dare to tell his ancestor that all his magic weapons had been robbed. Otherwise, he would have been furious, and he would not feel comfortable by then. You must know that throwing away a 6th level and 7th level magic weapon is not just a matter of throwing it away casually. After all, their family is not so wealthy yet. And she hasn't left yet, just to learn how to fight, and to see if there are any good magic weapons and grab a few. In this case, she told her ancestor that she would destroy the magic weapon by fighting with others. But after killing the opponent and getting some other magic weapons, the ancestor will not be too angry. But just when he was about to take action, he discovered that there was an invasion of demons from outside the territory, and there were a large number of them. Buletin had to fight and retreat until he later met a human ally. They were all organized by the humans in the 9 tribulation realm here, just to deal with the demons outside the territory. There was no way, no matter who they were, they didn't have the cultivation level of Meng Zhan. He can conquer the entire Thunder Tribulation mountain range by himself. As long as there are no masters of the 10,000 gods realm, he is absolutely invincible. And now, even those with average cultivation levels in the top 3 levels of the 10,000 gods realm cannot defeat Meng Zhan. Everyone looked at Meng Zhan teasing their goddess Buletin, and someone suddenly came out and said, "Who are you? How dare you be so frivolous with Fairy Buletin? Why don't you apologize to the fairy quickly?" Meng Zhan didn't care about him after hearing this. Instead, she kept looking at Buletin. At the same time, Buletin also noticed that Meng Zhan was looking at her, knowing that she couldn't hide. Everyone also saw the eye contact between the 2 of them, but it gave the impression that Meng Zhan was like a gangster, and Fairy Buletin was like an inexperienced little girl. At this time, the local ruffian fell in love with the little girl and wanted to force her to get her. However, the little girl did not want to go there, but was afraid that the local ruffian had no choice but to ask for help. At this time, Meng Zhan never thought that a simple look could allow these people to analyze so many things. If this continues, he will soon become the best actor, right? Of course, this scene was better led by the heroine Buletin. With just 2 glances, the atmosphere of everyone was raised, and everyone started to glare at Meng Zhan. Meng Zhan also slapped his head, and was used as a weapon by this dead girl again. It seemed that this girl wanted to borrow a knife to kill people. Seeing the look in Buletin's eyes that the plan was successful, Meng Zhan felt unhappy. Buletin was so sure of himself. Won't kill her? Then he heard someone yelling at him angrily, "Boy, who are you? You look like you want to rob the strong fairy. Meng Zhan also looked confused at this time. When did I want to rob him? She. At this time, another person was heard saying, huh, no matter who you are, the fairy is under our protection, so don't even think about touching a hair of the fairy. Meng Zhan was speechless at this time. What the hell is this group protection? Hua Sik. Then there were continuous voices, joining the queue to attack Meng Zhan. At this time, Meng Zhan was also particularly speechless, and then Buletin Xian said through a message, Fairy Buletin Xian, your mind is still so smart, do you want to borrow a knife to kill someone? Listen. When Meng Zhan sent a message to her and told her her little thoughts, Buletin Xian was a little worried, fearing that Meng Zhan would take action against her, but she didn't feel any guilt at all and said to Meng Zhan, aren't we all young masters? I robbed everyone of their most important things, otherwise the little girl wouldn't have made such a move. Meng Zhan listened to Buletin Xian complaining about himself in a coquettish and ambiguous way, and said through the voice, haha, Fairy Buletin Xian, things you can eat whatever you want, but you can't talk nonsense. It's obviously you who gave me those magic weapons, and it has nothing to do with me. But I didn't expect you to have such a naughty side. You said the most important thing is that I took you away. I thought you were pregnant if I didn't know. Buletin Xian was immediately surprised and speechless, thinking that since she became a fairy, no man had ever dared to speak to her like this in person, so rough, and also called her coquettish in front of her. Seeing that Meng Zhan didn't respond, the group of guardians thought they were afraid that there were too many of them, so they became even more unscrupulous and shouted loudly to attack them. Hey boy, I'm talking to you, come over and apologize to Fairy Buletin Xian. How can you apologize? I think you should kowtow and admit your mistake, otherwise you cannot express sincerity. Humph, fairies are holy, how could they accept such a dirty apology? At this time, Meng Zhan's face was as dark as Baogong. This feeling was really disgusting. He knew clearly that it was this girl's trick, but there was nothing he could do about it. After guarding the abyss for a billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 126. If you kill this girl directly, you will feel as if you are inferior to her. You kill her brutally. But if you don't kill her, even though she didn't say a word, these idiots are thinking endlessly. Incomprehensible. At this time, Lu Yu stood up and looked at Meng Zhan, but Meng Zhan felt that he saw disappointment in Lu Yu's eyes. What the hell is this? After everyone saw Lu Yu getting up, they suddenly stopped talking and wanted to see what he was doing. Lu Yu walked directly to Buletin Xian and said loudly, Fairy Buletin Xian, why, my young master has already been engaged to you, and now you are about to become a woman, are you so unwilling to admit it? As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Even Meng Zhan did not expect that Lu Yu could be so evil. What does a so-called fairy care about most? Of course, it cleans itself. Once it is touched by someone, the rebound force is unimaginable. At this moment, Buletin Xian's brain short-circuited. What the hell? When did this guy get engaged? I immediately realized that this was a trap designed by them to ruin my innocence. Buletin Xian then looked at Meng Zhan, his eyes almost bursting with anger, but Meng Zhan didn't bother to explain and just turned his head away and pretended not to see it. At this time, Lu Yu continued to finish the attack and said, what's wrong, mistress? Haven't you had enough trouble? Even if you have a little quarrel with me and the young master, it won't be like this. You'd better go to the young master with me quickly. You have a husband. What does a woman's wife mean among this group of men? Buletin Xian's face was already red at this time, because no matter what happened in the past, no one had ever dared to be so rogue to him. Sure enough, it must be that Meng Zhan who ordered him here. As a result, Meng Zhan just lay there and couldn't even cry out that he was wronged. But at this time, Meng Zhan was also sighing. Lu Yu, This kid looked cold and deep on the surface, but he didn't expect that he was not much worse than himself when he was dark. But at this time, the surroundings were already boiling, and they shouted, "Asshole, what are you talking about? How come we don't know that the fairy is already engaged? That's right, stop lying there. I think you are seeking death and dare to insult the innocence of the fairy. Everyone, come on, kill them both, don't let them continue to slander Fairy Bouletinchien." When Lu Yu saw them, he snorted coldly and pulled out Han Yuan and held it in his hand. Suddenly, a strong blood evil aura instantly filled the surroundings. Everyone who had been shouting just now fell silent instantly. This evil aura was too strong. Everyone has a kind of haze in their heart, and then their mind is shaking. Even in just a short moment, some people have begun to vomit blood and have their consciousness damaged. Lu Yu saw that the shock was enough, so he put the sword back behind his back and said immediately, "I praised you for being fools. Why do you think my young master doesn't argue with you? Just don't peel it." Just now, something unpleasant happened between my young master and Fairy Bouletinchien, so they were temporarily separated. You saw that after the young master said hello to Fairy Bouletinchien, Fairy Bouletinchien just glared at my young master and didn't say anything. You guys, on the other hand, actually started to chatter. Do you really think you can compete with my young master as a fairy? You are just a bunch of idiots. My young master will kill you all if he is not happy. Did you see those 20 corpses? Just because I was talking about how beautiful Fairy Bouletinchien was and wanted to pursue her, my young master killed me. After listening to Lu Yu's words, everyone couldn't help but feel cold. It was so cruel. He actually killed 29 Tribulations Lords just for talking about it? Then they all looked at Bouletinchien, and at this time Bouletinchien listened to Lu Yu's serious nonsense and almost believed it. At the same time, she felt that everyone was looking at her. She didn't know what to do for a while, but then she heard Lu Yu's voice transmission, "I advise you to just go down this step, otherwise my last words just now were also meant for you. The young master is not a soft-hearted person." After saying that, he turned back and continued to recover. At the same time, he sent a message to Meng Zhan, "If you meet such a woman in the future, just insult her directly. As long as you insult her too much, they will definitely be afraid of you. I have experience." After Meng Zhan heard this, he looked at Lu Yu blankly and thought to himself, "Damn, it seems this is not the first time this kid has done this kind of thing. How did he do it before?" Suddenly he was so curious. Sure enough, Bouletinchien actually lowered his head and walked toward Meng Zhan with a red face. At this time, Bouletinchien's heart was completely confused. What the person just said was right. This guy was indeed decisive in killing people. He had seen it before, and just now he went too far. If Y really died here because of something like this, then he would be a fool. Looking at Bouletinchien walking towards him, this made Meng Zhan feel even more amazing. He had always been there before. In the world of gods and demons, there are no talented fairies for him to practice. Bouletinchien has already walked to his side and stood there. For some reason, Meng Zhan suddenly felt a sense of secret joy. Suddenly everyone stopped talking and saw that Fairy Bouletinchien had already. After walking over, everyone could only express their feelings at this moment by saying WTF. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After guarding the abyss for a billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 127. I was meddling in a young couple's quarrel for a long time, and in the end, my boyfriend almost got killed. It would be too frustrating if he died like this. But Lu Yu didn't know that Meng Zhan had actually frightened Bouletinchien before. In addition, what he said to Bouletinchien just now made him really afraid that Meng Zhan would kill her if he got upset. Lu Yu thought that Meng Zhan just saw her. Only when Buxuan is pretty does she start teasing. The atmosphere at this time was extremely awkward. Everyone lowered their heads and looked at each other, and then looked at Buletin Xian, who was standing next to Meng Zhan, and looked at Meng Zhan. Well, they are indeed a good match, especially now that Buletin Xian is so young. The attitude of their daughter, when had they ever seen the aloof fairy Buletin Xian show such an expression? The main reason is because of the blood evil energy that Lu Yu released just now. Although these people appear to be an alliance, they are actually fighting on their own. No one can stand up for anyone, let alone a fairy. It's okay to join in the fun, but when it comes to life and death, I'm afraid even his own wife can't care. At this time, there was a sudden shock, and everyone looked at the treasure place. They knew that the treasure was finally going to appear. But at this time, everyone looked at Meng Zhan and Lu Yu. They were the strongest people in the field so far. If a treasure appeared, it would definitely belong to them. Moreover, Lu Yu still calls Meng Zhan young master. It seems that he is his servant. If a servant is so strong, how strong must this young master be? But now that we are standing in front of this treasure, who can give up? Everyone began to exchange glances with each other, and Meng Zhan also knew their little moves. But he won't care about it at all. It's just a bunch of ants. Even if they stick together, it's just a bunch of ants, and it's not worth caring about. Nowadays, no one is his opponent. Lu Yu, the only one who knows the law, has become his younger brother, and Buletin Xian next to him. Just ignore it. At this moment, the ground shook violently. Seeing this, everyone wanted to use their skills to fly, but suddenly they found that they could not fly. It was not a problem with the skills, but it seemed to be forbidden. At this time, Meng Zhan and Lu Yu also discovered the situation, but if they used their own laws to fight, they could barely fly, but the consumption was simply unaffordable. Immediately, everyone had to stabilize their bodies and try not to let themselves shake with the earth, but the center area in front had begun to collapse. When everyone saw it, they turned around and ran away. Meng Zhan also ran back with Lu Yu and Buletin Xian. At this time, Meng Zhan thought in his mind that this treasure must be extraordinary. He knew how hard the ground was. As a result, the treasure shook the ground as soon as it was born, and it burst out of the ground. It wasn't until they ran nearly 1,000 miles away that the ground stopped shaking and collapsing. Everyone looked toward the center to see what the supreme magic weapon was. There were already many people around who were secretly practicing their skills, preparing to kill Lu Yu and Meng Zhan with one blow as soon as the treasure came out, and grab the treasure by the way. And this is also the common acquiescence of nearly 100 people, because except for them, everyone is almost on the same level, even Buletin Xian is only slightly better than them. But the cultivation level shown by Lu Yu just now was not something they could resist. At this time, Meng Zhan and Lu Yu had already sensed the movements of this group of people. Since the treasure had appeared, there was no need to hide it. Then the two of them looked at each other. Buletin Xian also saw their movements, and hurriedly turned around to escape from the crowd. Everyone suddenly wondered why Fairy Buletin Xian ran away so suddenly. Then he saw Meng Zhang and Lu Yu heading towards here. At this time, someone shouted, "Brothers, stop hiding. These two bastards have already struck first. Let's go up. Kill them both, we are fighting for the treasure, otherwise none of us can grab them." Immediately, everyone swarmed forward, and the magic weapons, magical powers and skills were extremely brilliant for a while, attacking Meng Zhan and Lu Yu. Meng Zhan didn't care, his body was not worse than that of Suo Yangpeng, and he was much stronger than him, and then he rushed in front of Lu Yu and opened and closed the heavenly halberd, smashing all the incoming martial arts and magical powers. When Lu Yu saw this, he didn't show off. After all, his body was indeed not as strong as Meng Zhan, so he just pulled it out. After leaving the soul abyss, he slashed out the law sword chi and kept devouring the lives of these people. Upon seeing this, Menjian directly used the law slash and continued to slaughter everyone. Finally, someone discovered that these two people were so perverted that they even mastered them all. A trace of law suddenly panicked. He turned around and wanted to escape, but he didn't expect that Menjian and Lu Yu would not give them such a chance. Since they had already taken action, no one could leave alive. Lu Yu was unable to send out more swords. Angry, he had started to take the soul abyss and started to kill the people around him. Menjian was responsible for the people who were trying to escape in the distance. He was not afraid of attrition warfare. Suddenly, there were screams one after another, and the sounds of begging for mercy and curses also continued to rise. "Ah, you two gentlemen, the younger ones are short-sighted, please go around me." After guarding the abyss for 1,000,000,000 years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 128. This was one of the people who had just attacked Menjian for Buletinxian. Menjian remembered him and killed him without hesitation. "Damn it, these two have mastered the law. Do you two know who I am? I am Gao." Before he could finish his words, Menjian cut him in half with a halberd. What annoyed him the most were people who would move away from the family if they couldn't defeat him. "Since you clearly know that you don't have this strength, you are still cowering away. Since you have already attacked us, if you can't beat us, you will die. No matter who you name, it will be meaningless to you. I don't know him anyway." New corpses were constantly added to the ground, and the surroundings were instantly filled with blood mist. When Buletinxian, who was hiding aside, saw this situation, he felt like vomiting. Although he himself killed people, he had never been so brutal. These two men were simply killing people, and their moves were extremely barbaric and cruel. If Menjian knew Buletinxian's thoughts, he would definitely sneer at him. Should he ask for permission before killing someone? "Uncle, I'm here to kill you, what's wrong with you?" After a while, except for Menjian and Lu Yu, there was no one left alive on the field. Menjian shook the blood on his halberd and said, there is no one who can fight." Lu Yu couldn't help rolling his eyes. "Nonsense, billions of years there is only a monster like you in this world. The Nine Tribulations realm directly masters two laws. You are simply a pervert." The two of them immediately walked towards the treasure. Buletinxian saw it and followed him. Lu Yu frowned when he felt Buletinxian behind him. Did Menjian really fall in love with this girl? Seeing Lu Yu's expression, Menjian knew what he was thinking, and then said, "Don't worry, I don't like her, but she can follow her. She is a beauty. I can't bear to destroy her with my hands." Lu Yu heard finally. He shook his head and said that he could do it, but it didn't matter. Although he was a little exhausted when he slaughtered 100 people just now, it was still within the acceptable range. The maximum output was still Menjian. Now he fully understood that Menjian probably used less than the 7th level of skill when the two of them were fighting. Just now, he saw that Menjian was constantly swinging and slashing, and every blow contained laws. From the beginning to the end, he couldn't hit nearly 100 strikes with it. This was really terrifying. If he had wielded the soul abyss like this, he would have become a human by now. The two walked to the pit and saw that it no longer emitted golden light, but instead emitted blue light, which kept rising, giving off bursts of chill. The two of them couldn't help but be surprised. With their level of cultivation, they could still feel the biting cold. It seemed that this treasure was definitely not simple, and judging from the coldness, it was definitely a treasure that could hurt them both. It's just that the two people's consciousness seems to be blocked, and they can't detect what level of treasure it is, and they can't know how deep it is down there. They can't see down at a glance. At this moment, an extremely terrifying sound suddenly occurred, and a ghastly female voice came from the deep pit. "Have you ever been to Wumen Town? No one can survive there, the innocent ghosts laugh, and the evil ghosts rampant and unintentional, anyone can go there. The god is dead and has fallen into the wilderness. No one dares to bury the corpses of thousands of miles away. Immediately, the three people's hair exploded, and their bodies quickly retreated, breathing heavily. Mengjian was okay. When he heard that sound just now, the human emperor seal and the immortal king token suddenly turned to protect their consciousness. But Lu Yu was not so lucky. His face was pale at this time, cold sweat kept sliding down his face like water, and his gait was even worse. His hair was disheveled, his face was golden, and he really looked like a female ghost. If Mengjian hadn't calmed down, he might have thought that the words just now were those of her and hit her directly. But it's so scary. Who is he? Or is it that the person who just said that was not a human being at all? Just those few words he just said almost killed them. Then there was a noise in the ground, as if something was about to come out. At this time, the three of them had no intention of obtaining the treasure. They turned around and ran away. Mengjian and Lu Yu also kept retreating. He was afraid that something would come out and he wouldn't be able to cope with it, so he killed both of them directly. After exiting Wanli, the thing finally rose into the air. When the two of them saw it, it turned out to be a blue crystal coffin with a person lying inside, but they could not find out whether the person inside was a man or a woman. But judging from the woman's voice just now, she should be a woman. The outside of the crystal coffin is isolated from the spiritual consciousness and cannot be probed. The two people's spiritual consciousness also stops wherever the blue crystal coffin reaches, making it impossible to probe further. At this time, Buletian suddenly heard a scream. The two of them looked at it in horror, and found that Buletian was bleeding from 7 holes and kept tearing at random in the air. Their hearts were hanging in the air again. As a result, in just a short moment, Buletian was lying on the ground without making any sound. When the two of them checked, they found that he was no longer breathing and he was already dead. What happened? A good person died like this? What kind of existence is in this coffin, and what does that sentence mean? Where is Wumen town? After guarding the abyss for 1 billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 129. Questions kept rising in their hearts, but no one could tell them. In other words, the only people who could tell them were the people in the crystal coffin. But at this time, the two of them had long wanted to turn around and run away. If they hadn't seen Buletian die inexplicably, the two of them wouldn't have thought so much. For a moment, they stood there, not knowing what to do. At this time, I heard horrible screams coming from all around. They were the 9 tribulations lords who had not arrived here, but why were they attacked, but the two of them were fine? At this moment, the soul abyss behind Lu Yu suddenly shook, as if he encountered something exciting. He suddenly unsheathed himself, and the originally pure black sword suddenly revealed a dark red pattern. At this time, the human emperor's seal and the immortal king's token in Mengjian's body suddenly came out, spinning continuously above Mengjian's head, and the light directly enveloped the two of them. Both of them were baffled by this matter. Why did their magical weapon suddenly come out to protect the master? The soul abyss kept flying in the air, seeming to be controlled by someone, and seemed to be killing something. The crimson lines on the sword became clearer and clearer, and even slowly turned into light red. Mengjian said to Lu Yu at this time, Lu Yu, where did you get this giant sword? Why does it feel wrong? Lu Yu looked at Mengjian, hesitated for a moment, seemed to have made some determination, and said this sword was passed down from my family. When I came here this time, I felt that it seemed to be summoning something, or that it was being summoned when. Mengjian heard this, he suddenly had a headache and said complainingly, you kid, this is a trap. If you didn't tell me this earlier, why do I feel like nothing good has happened to me since I took you in? It's better this time. I'm afraid my life will be in trouble. The most important thing is, I don't know what is in the coffin. Lu Yu hurriedly covered Meng Zhan's mouth and said, I beg you, can you stop talking nonsense? That thing is too scary, don't you feel it? When I told it that I was angry, I think we both were. I have to explain it here. Meng Zhan knocked Lu Yu's hand off and said, if you don't say it, don't say it. Don't cover my mouth, but we can't just waste it like this. Why don't we slowly withdraw and take a look? Lu Yu looked at the human emperor seal and immortal king token on their heads, and then asked Meng Zhan, are your two magic weapons reliable? Meng Zhan said confidently, don't worry, they are more reliable than me. I don't know how many times I have been saved by them. Let's go, don't delay. After saying that, the two of them were about to retreat, but something strange happened. The usually most obedient human emperor's seal and immortal king's ling, the card, was still spinning in place, not moving with Meng Zhan and the others at all. Upon seeing this, the two people hurriedly returned to the center of the aperture, because just when they took one hand out, they suddenly felt a biting chill. The two of them looked at their hands, and there was a cold air wrapped around them, but there was no change on the outside, which made the two of them unbelievable. Lu Yu said, didn't you say they were reliable? Why are they not reliable now? Meng Zhan said angrily, don't always blame me. Look at your soul abyss. It's like the wind dancing on it. What's the matter? Not as good as the two of us. The two looked at each other for a while, and they were both discouraged. They talked to each other just now because they were too scared, trying to relieve themselves. As a result, the two of them talked for a long time and almost started fighting. It was so scary. The feeling has not dissipated in my heart. Meng Zhan couldn't help but said, it doesn't matter that we are here. Lu Yu subconsciously replied, the problem is that we can't leave. There were still screams from all around and reached the ears of the two of them. How miserable must one have died to be able to howl like this? Then the two of them shuddered in unison, and suddenly a bad feeling arose in their hearts. They looked up at the crystal coffin. The only thing that could make them feel this way now was the blue crystal coffin. Sure enough, the blue crystal coffin had reached a distance of 100 meters in front of the two of them. This made Meng and Zhan's scalps explode. They didn't even feel the coffin move. At this time, Han Yuan seemed to feel something. He stopped flying and stood directly in front of the two of them, seeming to be fighting against something. The human emperor's seal and the immortal king's token also rotated faster. At this time, the two of them felt a little depressed, and they dared to look into the crystal coffin. There was indeed a woman lying there. Her appearance was extremely beautiful, but there was an unspeakable sense of disharmony. This feeling was extremely uncomfortable. At this time, Lu Yu suddenly said, greetings, Senior. I apologize for disturbing you so much. Meng Zhan looked at Lu Yu blankly, wondering why he suddenly said this. Are you really sure that the woman here is still alive? But looking at Lu Yu, who kept giving him looks, Meng Zhan felt a little helpless. That's all, he was still a senior after all, so just say hello. But just as they were about to bow down, they heard a hissing sound. The two of them looked along the sound and were almost scared out of their wits. The lid of the crystal coffin was slowly opening on its own. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After guarding the abyss for 1,000,000,000 years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 130. This was a real pain for both of them. It was so torturous. Meng Zhan suddenly felt like he was robbing a tomb. Should the plot be reversed like this? When the coffin lid was fully opened, it lay horizontally in the air. As the two of them watched, they saw with their own eyes that the woman opened her eyes, and then started to do it slowly. A pair of eyes are completely black, with no whites, and there is a slight dark red sparkle in the middle. I don't know if they are her eyes. The two of them knew that they could no longer escape, so they simply looked at what the female ghost was going to do, and then looked at each other. The female ghost suddenly smiled at the two of them. She did not move her mouth but made a sound, but it was not as sinister as before. She said to the two of them, I didn't expect that when I woke up this time, I would attract the human emperor and Rakshasa. It's really interesting, but I don't know if it's a coincidence or someone deliberately arranged it, but the human emperor and Rakshasa of this generation are really too weak. What's wrong? Has our human race fallen? After hearing this, both of them thought in their hearts. Shocked, Mengjian knew that he had the seal of the human emperor, so he probably recognized him as the human emperor, but what happened to the Rakshasa? And from what she said, it seems that every generation has the human emperor and Rakshasa, so what's going on? Then Mengjian asked probingly, Senior, how long is each generation you mentioned? However, the female ghost did not answer Mengjian's words. Instead, she seemed to directly see through the minds of the two of them and said, I see. It seems that you have just become the human emperor and Rakshasa, and have not yet awakened. I have no intention of giving you answers. What I can tell you is that you have both inherited the legacy of your ancestors. Mengjian was surprised when he heard this. What? Have we both inherited the legacy of our ancestors? Does that mean my ancestor was once a human emperor? When was that? At this time, I heard the female ghost say again, is this the immortal king's token from the immortal court? It's really interesting. The human emperor actually has the immortal court's token. Mengjian then asked, Senior, do you know about the immortal court of the human race? Human immortal court? Ha ha ha, it's really funny, they actually talked about the human race's fairyland. It seems that the human race has indeed declined. And Lu Yu was also surprised when he heard that Mengjian had the immortal court token. He didn't expect that his young master was actually a divine envoy. But after hearing what the female ghost said, he couldn't help but feel confused. Is there anything wrong with this? Mengjian was also confused at this time, and then asked, Senior, where exactly is this human fairy court? The female ghost snorted coldly and said, they are not good things, but it is not something you can know now. You two will become stronger first. At least it must be in fairyland. The rest will be the same. Court death. At this time, Lu Yu asked, who is the senior? The female ghost yawned and said, I don't remember who I am as a dead person, and I don't even know if I am a dead person. What I just told you two is a sporadic memory of that life. Mengjian continued to ask, then the Meng family is the emperor of that generation? I said, those are all my sporadic memories, and now that I have just returned from the uninhabited town, I don't know much. Mengjian heard her mention the unmanned town again, and immediately said, Senior, I just mentioned the unmanned town in the crystal coffin, what exactly is that place? After hearing Mengjian's words, the woman suddenly raised her eyebrows and raised her voice. What did you say? Who said they just passed Wumen town? Suddenly a chill came over, and both of their magical weapons trembled. At this time, they heard the female ghost continue to say, quickly tell me, this matter is very important. Who else mentioned Wumen town besides me? Mengjian said. When the senior was in the deep pit just now, there was a voice, mentioning Wumen town, and then strange things began to happen around him. First, one of our companions was bleeding from 7 holes, and his hands were constantly clawed. Die into the void, and the people around you will continue to scream, and it will end only after you wake up, senior. Hearing this, the female ghost had already started to look around, and then she seemed to be answering Mengjian, but she seemed to be saying to herself, asshole, you dare to use me, very good, you dare to come back from Wumen town, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Then he said to Mengjian and Lu Yu, you two, remember, never tell anyone about this matter, at least not now. When you become a fairyland, if you are not afraid of death, it will be up to you. Of course, You can say whatever you want now, and I don't need to say more about the consequences. After hearing what the female ghost said, they quickly agreed, and then the female ghost lay down in the crystal coffin, escaped directly into the void, and disappeared. The two of them looked at the disappeared female ghost and were speechless, but Meng-Zhan finally knew about his family background, and Lu Yu seemed to know more than he did. Then he looked at Lu Yu, and Lu Yu found that Meng-Zhan was looking at him, a little confused, and didn't understand why he looked at him like that. Meng-Zhan said to him, "What on earth are you doing? What else do you know? It seems you know what kind of Rakshasa you are." After guarding the abyss for 1 billion years, when he returned, his family became a criminal clan. Author, Top 47. Chapter 131. After hearing what Meng-Zhan said, Lu Yu said immediately, "That was what Han Yuan told me. We will talk about it later." After hearing what Lu Yu said, he had no choice but to stop asking, and Lu Yu said to Meng-Zhan, "It's not that I didn't tell you. But there are some things that I really can't say now. I will tell you later." Meng-Zhan nodded and said nothing. He always felt that the things behind this were getting more and more terrifying. The female ghost just now said that she wanted to understand this. Everything, first reach the fairyland. That means she must already be in a fairyland. Are we facing a fairy in a fairyland just now, or a ghost? But for the fairyland, Meng-Zhan didn't have too much entanglement. As long as he was given enough extraterrestrial monsters, he could upgrade infinitely. At this time, the human emperor's seal and the immortal king's token all returned to the body, and Lu Yu's soul abyss also returned behind him again. The two of them looked at the coldness that had disappeared and all the dead people. But at this time, the two of them discovered that the barrier was disappearing little by little, which meant that it would not take long for this place to recover and no longer restrict cultivation. Meng-Zhan suddenly thought of something and said to Lu Yu, "I'm afraid we are going to be in trouble." Lu Yu didn't react at first. Wasn't the female ghost gone? And I didn't sense any danger. But then they saw the corpses of the people around them, plus the huge pit and the missing female ghost, the so-called treasure. With such a clear battlefield, the two of them might be in big trouble. Everyone would probably think that the two of them were just trying to get the treasure, so they killed everyone without leaving a single person alive. Then what will follow is the endless pursuit of the major families. When the time comes, he and Meng-Zhan will really be unable to withstand it, and they are in danger of falling at any time. You must know that there are no restrictions on cultivation outside, and those who will hunt them down will definitely be masters of the 10,000 god realm. Meng-Zhan took out the Immortal King token at this time and said with some doubt, "I don't know if this token can still be used." Lu Yu next to him smiled bitterly, "I'm afraid it is useful on the surface, but if we don't need to do it openly, they will definitely send people to assassinate us endlessly." Meng-Zhan sighed and said, "There is no other way, just take it step by step. At least we must improve our strength first, otherwise no matter what, all protective magic weapons are useless." Lu Yu nodded and said, "Yes, but what should we do now?" Suddenly, Meng-Zhan remembered the magic weapon he grabbed from Nangongxian, the Wanja brush. He took it out immediately and said, "It seems that we can only rely on this thing. I hope the outside world doesn't know our existence. There happens to be no thunder tribulation here and the space is relatively stable. Let's go directly." But then he thought of something. Emperor Yi and the others are still in the Shinwu heaven realm, but now they have no choice but to let them stay here temporarily. Both Bai Xiaotian and Zhen Yang know their identities. It was impossible to take action against Emperor Deng Ai and the others, and when he came, he didn't take them with him at all, and it was even less possible for the people outside to know that they were his men. Besides, even if someone wants to make things difficult for them, Zhen Jiangshuo will help because of his status as a divine envoy. In any case, Zhen Jiangshuo is also the general of the human immortal court, and those people will not act recklessly. Thinking of this, the two of them no longer hesitated, taking the Wanja pen and directly injecting mana. Suddenly the whole pen lit up, and formation marks began to appear from the end of the pen. It seems that this pen actually has a formation engraved on it. When mana is injected, the formation will be read from the pen pole and finally transmitted to the tip of the pen. At this time, Meng Zhan really admired the person who created this pen, regardless of whether it was a replica or not, because it was already very difficult just to depict the formation. It is even more difficult to carve a formation that can open the world gate into such a small pen barrel. I really don't know how to accomplish it. Seeing that the nib of the pen was completely lit up and the bristles of the pen were completely flowing and exuding spiritual energy, Meng Zhan suddenly looked at the Wanja pen and felt troubled. When Lu Yu saw it, he asked Meng Zhan, "What's wrong? You should open the boundary gate so we can leave easily." Meng Zhan said, "Where are we going? And is this a random transmission or a fixed transmission?" Continuous questions also followed. Lu Yuan was confused and could only say, "This is the first time I have seen this high-end product, and I don't know how to use it." In fact, what Meng Zhan was most afraid of at this time was that he directly opened the gate and entered the Nangong realm. In which case he would really die without a burial place. But if he doesn't open it now, he will also die. When the gang breaks in, even if he takes out the Immortal King token, it may not be effective. This thing is just a card. If they attack in groups, I am afraid that even Immortal Court will not bother them. After all, the law does not punish everyone. Moreover, the forces behind several of them are indeed not easy to deal with. The most important thing is that the Immortal Court token of mine was rewarded by the system, and I really don't know what to do with it. There is no other way. Although I feel that I have many cards, I am afraid that the situation is no longer clear.